Good evening and welcome to Writers Unplugged. This is a series that will air throughout the year in support of Cleveland Reads. Writers Unplugged is a chance to hear your favorite writers or even new to you writers in conversation, as if you were eavesdropping on them in a coffee shop. Cleveland Reads is an initiative to improve literacy levels in our community, and Mayor Bibb has challenged Clevelanders to read 1 million books and or 10 million minutes, and we're almost halfway there. We're at just under 4 million minutes. My name is Jen Jumba. I'm a librarian here at Cleveland Public Library, and one of my favorite things besides reading is talking to writers. It's an opportunity to get to know them, their craft, what inspires their stories, where they like to write, essentially getting to know them better and seeing them as human beings and not just the name on the spine of a book. So tonight, I'm so lucky. I'm in conversation with best-selling authors Roz Nay and Robyn Harding. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes to figure out who else is visiting Writers Unplugged, both virtually and in person. Visit clevelandreads.com/unplugged. Max Back's Books on Coventry is our wonderful independent bookstore. They have copies of Roz's and Robyn's books for you, so you can visit them in person or go to maxbacks.com. And then take a moment, let us know where you're watching us from. If you have questions about the characters, the story, the research, be happy to ask them for you. So here's a brief introduction to these writers and alleged friends. Robyn Harding is the author of numerous books, including international bestsellers, The Party, The Arrangement, The Swap, which was an instant #1 Globe and Mail, Toronto, and a #1 Toronto Star bestseller. She's also written and executive produced an independent film. She lives in Vancouver with her family and 2 cute but deadly rescue chihuahuas. Her latest, The Drowning Woman, was just released last week, so happy book birthday. And I know we're looking forward to hearing you talk about it more this evening. Roz's debut novel, Our Little Secret, was a national bestseller, won the Douglas Kennedy Prize for the Best Foreign Thriller in France, was nominated for the Kobo Emerging Writer Prize for Mystery and the Arthur Ellis Best First Novel Award. Her second best-selling novel, Hurry Home, was shortlisted for the Crime Writers of Canada Best Thriller. And The Hunted, her third book, came out in July of 2021, was nominated for the Best Crime Novel in 2022. Roz has lived and worked in Africa, Australia, the US, and the UK. She now lives in British Columbia with her husband and 2 children. So I was lucky enough to go to Toronto a few years ago for a Mystery Writers Conference and was fascinated after hearing Robyn and Roz speak on panels that I had to read everything they wrote along with everything they ever will write, including grocery lists. So I had a couple of fangirl moments meeting them and then was able to spend time with them. And I marvel at how kind and cool both Robyn and Roz are. And at the same time, they write incredibly dark stories. So a note to self, stay on their good side. So join me in a warm Writers Unplugged welcome to Roz and Robyn. Hi.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
So good to see you. And before the broadcast started, we were kind of chatting beforehand to see who would talk first. But, you know, I can't be bribed. So we flipped a coin.
We decided Roz.
We decided
me.
Absolutely. So let's start off. How did the two of you become friends?
Oh, Roz, tell the story.
Has it? It's a bit, no. How did we become friends, Robyn? No, we were sent actually on tour by Simon & Schuster Canada when we both had our first thrillers out. Robyn's had tons of books before thrillers, but Our Little Secret was the first book that I published. So we got sent to Toronto. And the reason I'm laughing is because we checked in as writers. We didn't know each other, but we checked in as writers to this lovely hotel. And then through the course of the week that we spent together, Robyn would come down in the morning and say things like, wow, wasn't that, brownie on the pillow and the handwritten note from the concierge? Wasn't that so sweet? And I was like, what brownie? And then I found out, and she'd go, oh, the bath I had last night, so relaxing. And I did not have a bath in my room. And then the final funny thing was we were reading at a little bookstore and they put stools out for us to sit on. And Robyn's was like 2 foot taller than mine. So I had to had to sit there and look up at her. So that we laughed our heads off all around Toronto for a week. We had the best time ever, and then we just that's quite a long story, but we've been buddies ever since.
Texting each other 30 times a day ever since.
It's awesome. So one of the things that I like seeing, right, is you all as mystery writers, just how friendly you are and how supportive you are of one another. I mean, you write these incredibly dark, twisty stories, but yet you're like the nicest people I think I've ever met. So, well, at least you're good actors, right? For the sake of this broadcast, for the sake of my career, right? But let's start with book birthday, right? This is Robyn's The Drowning Woman, right? Just
shiny.
released. I know it is shiny and sparkly, right? So congratulations, first of all. Was on the edge
1 week today.
Yeah, it's 1 week. Yeah, it's amazing. It doesn't look like a day over a day. But I was on the edge of my seat the entire time reading this, right? So I've been trying to describe the book to people, right? You know, we as librarians do like our little elevator book talks, book pitches, whatever you want to call them. And I was like, I get stumped every single time because there's so many layers and nuances, and I don't want to give it away, but I figured you're probably better equipped to talk a little bit about and introduce us to this book.
Sure, but it's not the short, quippy, two-liner that I wish it was, because it just doesn't really work for this book.
I'm glad. I thought I was struggling and they were going to take away my librarian card. Like, you can never talk books again, Jen.
Book about it, and then 20 minutes later, they're like, "Oh, are you still going?" Okay, so as short as I can. It's about a woman called Lee who had a restaurant that she lost during the pandemic and made some shady investments that she ends up homeless and living in her car. And she feels very vulnerable, all alone like that. So she is parking next to the ocean in this very wealthy enclave surrounded by seaside mansions. And as she's sleeping in her car one morning at dawn, she hears one of these women drowning in the ocean, and she rushes to save her. And this woman, this society wife, is very angry because she said she was trying to end her life. And an unlikely friendship forms between them. And then one day, the wealthy woman asks the homeless woman to help her disappear. And from there, it's a story of trust and betrayal and friendship, and it just goes crazy from there.
Yeah, it's really well done.
Thank you.
I think this is the first book, and I could be wrong, that I probably am, where the pandemic was referenced. It was kind of the reason she lost her restaurant was a result of the pandemic. So it was like mentioned, but it wasn't like harped on.
Yeah. So one thing, when I was writing this as we were coming out of the pandemic and return to normal life, and one thing that really, played on my mind, and I heard so much about, was how different people were affected differently, different industries, marginalized people, and women, definitely women. And women-owned businesses were more likely to fail. Rates of depression and anxiety really rose significantly with women, and domestic abuse of women just skyrocketed. So I wanted to take two characters. I didn't want to write something set in the pandemic, but we were all changed by it, some people more than others. And I wanted my characters they both have been changed in very different ways, but they have both been really impacted.
Absolutely. So Roz, your latest book, The Hunted, right? I'll hold it up to the shiny sparkly. Look, so much better. I meant that you couldn't see me.
Which one's better? Which one's better, Jen?
I said so much better because you couldn't see me. You can just
hear me. Okay. I thought
the sparkly cover was
my gosh.
I thought you meant Robyn's book was better than mine, Jen.
No, yours, yeah. One of the things that you two do that are similar is that you tell stories from alternating perspectives.
Do you want to talk about me?
I'm sorry?
No.
Well, maybe.
No.
It's a form of flattery. So I figure I'll conduct this interview in alternating perspectives, right? And copy you too.
It's good. I love the alternating point of view because I like telling the same event twice because I always find that quite interesting. I like it in TV shows as well. Yeah, two voices. There are two voices in The Hunted. So how many are you in yours, Robyn?
There's two in mine. It's a little different structurally because I've done so The Hunted is two voices first person. No, more than two, isn't it?
It's hard to remember, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know you've got Lee.
Mine is two. I was asking you about The Hunted.
But you're asking me. I've got two first person. Yes.
Two first person. Okay, so I have two first person, but I don't alternate chapters. In this case, I used part one and then switched to part two with a different narrator, which first time I've ever done that. And it was fun. It was fun to do it that way and allowed some big reveals and twists that I couldn't have really done the other way. So yeah, it was a nice change in structure. But what Roz has done in The Hunted is something I've also done, which is also great and keeps it moving. I feel like more perspectives, right?
Yeah, I think that's the thing I love as a reader is seeing like the same event play out, but seeing it from different perspectives, and then you end up going, well, wait, which one really happened? Or did it really seem like that? Right. And Roz, I will say that Robyn copied you because your character's name is Leo in this book and hers is Lee. So it's a shortened nod to you.
I know. Everything is.
Roz is so obsessed with naming her characters.
I really am.
Big thing. Yeah. Like for the grocery store clerk who has like five lines in chapter 2. Leo William 30 names, and I'm like, I don't care.
I know. I love it. I love names. I'm obsessed. I'll spend all day, like 4 hours, writing names on a list. Love it.
Yeah. How do you go about deciding which is the right one that fits that particular character?
Normally I'll text Robyn and she'll say, "Stop being such a dummy and write the book." And then I'll just be like, "Oh, whatever. I'll just pick the top one."
Stop procrastinating.
No, but I always think it's kind of interesting is how people, end up getting names, how books end up with titles. I mean, speaking of titles, did both of your titles were they the original titles that you had wanted? Or did they sometimes
mine wasn't. Yeah, mine wasn't quite. But I think that it comes down again, I think, to the catalogue that's happening with the publisher at the time. And there might have been something quite close to the one I wanted. So yeah.
And mine that's what I pitched it and they kept it, which is
nice.
I'm happy. Yeah.
Sometimes that works out like that. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your writing process? I mean, do you kind of know what the story is beginning to end? Do characters surprise you?
I feel like Robyn is so much better at structure than I am. I usually can know, I'm quite into characters and setting. That's kind of how I find my way in. But quite often I don't have a good handle on what the massive problem is or who the characters are. I need to get to know them a little bit, maybe. But I tend to write the first 50 pages about 50 times. And then once I've got it solid, I can go forward. Yeah, but I do think Robyn's a bit of a pro at knowing structure. I think maybe just because she's been in the business for close to 60 years. So... So it comes more easily.
It's at my age, it's gonna back at something. So I have written this is my 13th novel. So some of us pick it up quicker than others. One thing I did spend like several years on was screenwriting, and structure is everything is screenwriting, character as well, and subtext and dialogue, but structure is so laid out in screenwriting that I had not even really thought of it when I was writing prior to that, I was writing like rom-coms, which we at the time called chick lit. And I didn't think about structure. I just sort of told it naturally, and it just kind of worked out. But with a thriller, I feel like structure is more important, because, you know, pacing and placing clues and keeping readers engaged and hitting the right twists and turns. So I use a lot of the structure that I learned in screenwriting when I'm laying out a story, and then I kind of fill in those major plot point beats that are used in screenwriting.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you have so much structure, and yet as a reader, I felt off balance, right? Because I didn't quite know what was going to happen. I wasn't quite sure who was good, who was not good. Yeah, you like them, then you don't like them, then you like them again. Both of you do that in your books, right? Because you talk about pacing, and there are these chapters that, you know, there's always a cliffhanger at the end of one chapter, which just propels you to the next one, to the point where, like, okay, I'm not eating dinner and laundry's not getting done. And so, and yet you're clever enough to not give anything away, because people who read mysteries, we tend to pick stuff up.
Yeah.
So to be able to kind of not tip your hand, I don't know how you do that when you know what's going to happen, because as a reader, I didn't.
It's hard because thriller writers are so sophisticated and they read so much, and it really is hard to trick them, I feel like. So sometimes I don't know who the villain is until I'm a certain, you know, partway through the book, and I'm like, okay, who is the least likely, but not the most least likely, because people will guess the least likely.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Where's that?
Can you hear that?
Yes.
Where is it?
That's just the police car going by my house, I
In
think.
your house. Oh, wow. Wow. What a rough neighborhood, Ron.
I know.
I was gonna say,
You know,
like a good segue for thriller and crime writers.
Oh,
they're coming for me. They found out where I live.
George Ron?
Yeah. So they discovered your search history.
Yeah. I think it's good, though, to be able to, I think that's part of our job as thriller writers, to try and keep readers guessing, isn't it? To kind of destabilize them and draw them in and kind of make them trust the wrong person or align with the wrong person, and then realize late in the day that they are rooting for completely the wrong character. I think that's most of the fun as a writer.
Yes,
you can pull it off. But I agree with Robyn. I think it's very difficult to do because the readers are usually kind of step for step now. They've seen it all. So it's hard. It's hard to pull off a twist.
Absolutely. I think that's the great thing that you all do, is you're still pulling off these twists. I mean, there were moments in the book where I actually gasped in both of them, like, oh, heck no. And then I think, like, it's kind of us as humans, right? Like, we're not all good. We're not all bad.
Yeah.
Right. And your character, Lee, in The Drowning Woman, I mean, it was like, it could be any one of us, like, owns this great restaurant, and then just through like a series of unfortunate events loses it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I never want to, you know, teach anyone lessons in my books. I just write to entertain. But if there's any takeaway sort of morally from the story, it is, I mean, she's a regular woman. She was very successful.
Right.
She's not on drugs. She's not mentally ill, and she is working, and she's still homeless. You know, it's just some people, things just take a really, really wrong turn.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's so hard. And in the States here, one of the fastest populations of homeless are those who are employed. They're just underemployed. Like, they are in a shelter, they have a job, they don't have enough to be able to buy, you know, their own place or to rent their own place. You know, so many people have been kind of dispersed and displaced as a result of things.
And again, for women, they don't necessarily want to go to shelters because there are not always women-only shelters, and they don't feel safe there. So yeah, it's rough. It's rough.
Yeah, it's almost like that butterfly effect. Like, one thing happens, and then you just see this then this happens in this ripple effect.
Yeah.
So,
I think it needs to be relatable as well to readers. I
Right.
think they need to know as they're reading it that these aren't characters that are wildly beyond them. So you put anybody in a certain set of circumstances and you don't know. I mean, even for ourselves, you don't know what you'd do if enough things fell apart that quickly. So, and we need flawed characters in thrillers. We don't want to have people that are making great decisions.
And when
We
people
need
talk
pressure.
about unlikable characters as if that's a negative, I'm like, you're inside these people's heads at the worst moments of their lives. And they're going through unthinkable drama. Who would be likable in that situation? I mean, you know, we've stripped so much away from them that they are, you know, often they're terrified or they're fighting for survival or what have you.
Right.
And, you know, you're being on your best behavior and your most polite and your kindest and most considerate is not at the top of these characters' minds.
No. Yeah, so I'm joined in conversation with best-selling writers and alleged friends, Robyn Harding and Roz Nay. So you're right. I mean, you have to have characters that we can relate to. And Roz, you said something interesting about you are really focused on characters and you're really focused on setting. And I think that comes through in your book, The Hunted. So can you talk a little bit about the setting for The Hunted?
Yeah, so I based it on a dive camp that I went to in Africa when I was in early 20s. I went and lived, it was on this very remote island in Tanzania. And I basically set the whole novel there. I just took an adventure that I'd had and remembered it all, which was really fun to do, to go back there, and then turned it really horrible. So everything that could have gone wrong went wrong in the fictional version. Yeah. So it's a diving camp, 2 young Americans. They kind of take, one of them, the boy Jacob, takes a job there, and they're really out of their element. They land in Africa. They don't know what they're doing. They're backpacking. They have a bit of a scare in a hostel, and then they meet a really suave couple who are super good looking and cool. And so they think they'll hang out with them and make a happy little foursome. I did base that character on Robyn. It's super cool. Oh, not the police.
The fuzz out of the...
Wow. It's inner city Nelson here. Yeah, yes. High crime area.
I hate to give Roz compliments because her ego is already so huge, but The Hunted is very, very good. And the setting, like what you were saying, Jen, it's so real. Like I knew you'd been there. Yeah. And you know, it's somewhere I've never been, but it was so immersive. It was like being in Africa and then being a fish out of water in this amazing place when all this terrible stuff happens.
Yeah.
Really thanks, good. Robyn. I think that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
And I will say this is being recorded, so you will have that for posterity's sake. No, but I think so. Like as librarians, we're kind of trained in terms of recommending books to people, and they say that there are typically 4 doors by which people enter a book. Right? They read for a character, they read for setting, they read for plot or story, or they read for language, and they can overlap. But almost like the setting becomes its own character in The Hunted, and same thing, felt like I was there. I felt like I was like, pulled up a stool and having a beer with these guys. And then it's like, people aren't always what they seem. Right. And I think that's what comes across in both of your books is that, wow, you think these are good people or kind people, and sometimes they surprise you.
Yeah. I loved the disappearing into that book. I wrote it in the pandemic. So I used to kind of, it was quite a nice way to shut out all the uncertainty of everything and just kind of go into a travel memory really and go back to this kind of fictional island in my head. It was kind of escapist for me. But yeah, I do think people need to be untrustworthy. And if you meet people traveling, they can be whoever you want them to be. But the same in Robyn's book, I think. Yeah, people can spin a good yarn, can't they? They can tell you whatever they want. Absolutely.
It's kind of a little bit unsettling. I mean, for us as human beings, that when we meet people, that They
That's
might
why I
not.
never trust anyone. Roz is calling us friends. I'm like, you're still just edging your way in.
It's taken me years and years.
Overly familiar because I don't trust people.
Yeah, no, because now I'm a little like unsettled. Like, wait a second.
Careful, Jen.
Be very careful. So the other thing that's similar in your books is that you have characters that are looking for fresh starts. So
yes, very much so.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Why it was important to have that as one of their, I guess, challenges, so to speak?
Well, I think for my book anyway, yeah, they both have suffered this lockdown, worst case scenario, as in someone losing their livelihood and someone becoming an abused woman. And so they are both, so damaged in different ways, almost opposite ways, because one of them is without a home and one of them is basically trapped in her home. And they find each other and they're so different, but they might be the path out for each other. But do they have to sacrifice each other in order to get what they want? So that's sort of what I played with in The Drowning Woman.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, I think that I was just trying to find a way to get these two young characters out of America and into this strange adventure. And I think that you have to try and find a push. You have to kind of shove your characters into this whole new, again, kind of destabilizing situation for the thriller to begin. And if you give them too many options, like too many friends or a nice family member or like a granny they can go live with or something, they are never going to go to Africa. So I had to just be like, kill everyone, take everything from them, and then they go to Africa.
Yeah, and I think having them at a lower point, having more stripped away from them when they enter. I did a lot of research into homelessness, and you never sleep. You don't have a good night's sleep. You don't have proper nutrition. So your brain, you're not making the wisest choices, and you're desperate for human connection and things like that, make a character more compelling and more, she's more of a risk taker than you might be if you were, living in a comfortable home and had your bearings and felt like you had your feet on the ground. So same within the Hunted, they're all fish out of water scenarios.
You've got to have that, otherwise they make good decisions, and you can't have that.
Yeah,
fair enough. I'm curious about some of the research you did on homeless. I teach a class, and so part of the class talks about that. And there's a gentleman who runs a house in Chicago, and he talks about when they're panhandling on the ground, so people are always looking down on them, and just what that does to their mental well-being. That they're not on the same eye level as the rest of us, right? And so. And I can't imagine, like, everything that you own that's important to you, you have to carry with you kind of at all times and be on guard at all times. So
yeah, there was stuff that I didn't think about. So when I decided I wanted to write a homeless character, I thought, well, let me just really put myself into that, mentally put myself into that position and see if I can, imagine what it's like. And then I thought, well, I better do my due diligence. And I'd done a little volunteer work. There's a neighborhood in Vancouver called the Downtown East Side that is the worst neighborhood in Canada for homelessness and addiction and mental health. And I just couldn't do it. Like, I was so rattled by the experience. I just, I have such admiration for people who work down there. So I had 3 friends who work at shelters and in kitchens, and one was an outreach worker for probably a decade. So he was super helpful for me. And the first thing he said, I gave him, the scenario, and I said, she lives in her car. And he goes, so how does she get a weapon? And I was like, well, she's in her car though, thinking, and he's like, doesn't matter. Every person who is without proper shelter needs a weapon now.
Correct.
Man or woman. And so that was one of the first things I had to reference in the opening chapter is that she has a knife, and it's throughout the story. It's something that she has come to rely on as some, tiny bit of safety in her completely vulnerable world.
Absolutely. Roz, you looked like you were going to say something.
No, I was just thinking, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine sleeping in a car and needing a weapon. I mean, and we do have to put ourselves into the heads of our characters a bit, but and in some cases it is frightening to think it wouldn't, like we said at the beginning, with a few steps, you might find yourself in a situation that's similar.
That's just it. How some of us are one situation away from, it's unsettling. It's unsettling. So the other thing that struck me in both your books is in The Drowning Woman, how much of who we are, our identity, is tied to our job and our career, right? And Roz, same in your book, right? If you're starting, over, fresh start, how much we wrap up in, it's the first thing anybody ever asks when you're out somewhere. Like, oh, hi, I'm so-and-so. Oh, well, what do you do? And it's like, it's kind of enmeshed. So.
Yeah. So if I could take that, Roz, at the beginning. So it was so interesting with these two women, particularly Lee, having been a restaurateur and then suddenly being homeless. And I had other things that she experiences that really changed her as a woman, and how she sees herself. Like, all her makeup is stolen. She doesn't have any proper shampoo. Like, she was like this, attractive, successful person. And then suddenly she's, you're living that way. You start to look that way. You're not sleeping, eating. You don't have makeup. You don't have hair care. And there are scenes in there where, people are afraid of her. Like, she's showering at a public pool, and some moms come in with their babies, and the way they look at her, and she's just like, if you knew who I really was, it would be a different story.
And then
right?
she ends up, working at a diner, which is like the complete opposite of what her skill set is.
Of running her own restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. Michelin rated. Yeah.
Working under the table. And then the other woman in it is Hazel, who is basically a prisoner of a very domineering, successful, wealthy husband. And she has no identity because he doesn't let her have one. So he allows her to do some charity work. And then if she doesn't do it right, she's in trouble. And, so she doesn't have any identity other than as his wife. And so that's why it's so hard from her to climb out of that relationship.
Yeah, for me in The Hunted, I had Stevie and Jacob, and they're the American couple. And Jacob's a commercial diver, which is why he takes this job in Africa as a diver. But Stevie's, a lot of her identity is tied up in mainly the world that she was in. She was running a bar and living above it, and her grandmother owned it. And I take all of that from her in the first 30 pages. So at the beginning of the story, her grandmother's died. She's forgotten to leave a will. So nothing's left to her. So she's got nothing and nowhere to be. So she kind of is a bit of a lost soul. And I think a lot of her identity is kind of in question. And she's got a few memories of the past that she's kind of stashed away that she doesn't really want to think about. And obviously all of that's going to come out. But then we've got the character of Leo. I think he's a neurologist. I think that's what I had him as. And he would tell you that he's got quite a prestigious career, and he presents himself that way, definitely. But again, his identity is tied to it, but it's just whether he's presenting the real identity in the stories that he tells in the backpackers lounge.
Yeah, absolutely.
A good backstory, I remember now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, Roz, you said you have a day job. Does that influence your writing at all?
Well, I mean, what's interesting about it? I mean, I work in child protection, and I actually try hard to not write about that. and it is a bit bleak. Like, I spend my days there and then my free time writing dark thrillers. So it's amazing that I'm smiling at all, really.
It's because Robyn's here.
Robyn's here.
I'm like, you call like a life preserver that she can.
Yeah, you're the beacon of light in my life. I think that what I've learned through my job most interestingly, I think, is the way that people, and I do use this in thrillers a lot, is the way that people will tell themselves a story, a version of the story, enough times that actually it becomes real, when clearly it isn't real. So people will come into my office quite frequently believing that they're a victim of something. And then if you look up the facts of their file, once they've gone, because you feel horrible for them, they're like really upset.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then you look up the file and it's just like nothing like the story you just heard. Wow. So that's really interesting. And I just feel that humans do that generally in small ways and in these kind of massive ways. Something traumatic happens to you, and in order to carry it, you change it so that, yeah, you can retell it to yourself. And I think that's actually quite a helpful observation as a thriller writer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm joined in conversation with best-selling writers Roz Nay and Robyn Harding. One of the other things that kind of strikes me with the character Hazel is carrying secrets, right? So Maggie Smith has a new book. It's like a part memoir, like you can make the world a beautiful place. And she was listening to somebody on NPR, an illusionist, talk about secrets. Like, secrets change the way we breathe. They change the way we move, and that they just become so heavy. So having to carry those, and first of all, that you have characters that do it. And then I would say, like, secondary to that, as writers, you do that. Like, you have that secret, like, that we as readers don't quite know yet. So, like, having to carry that and, like, talk about your book, but no spoilers, it's always kind of amazing. But yeah, secrets, not.
I think it's just like when to stop talking as an author, right? It's like, yeah, it's, I don't know. I don't know about you, Roz. It feels pretty natural not to give away the spoilers, right? Because we work so hard for them. Right. I feel like I work so hard there's like a really big twist in The Drowning Woman that I like twisted my brain into knots to get that one done. And I would never give it away. Like, you'd have to pry my fingernails off to get that out of me before someone had read it, because I think we're protective of our hard work.
Absolutely. How long does it take you all to write a book?
I think it takes Robyn about
like a week,
4 days. Yeah.
I was being generous with a week.
I wish. No, I always say, like, ideally, I would say my optimum time is usually about 9 months, like a baby. Yeah,
like a
9
baby.
to 12 months, I'd say, because I do like to watch a bit of daytime TV.
You do, Ron. Yes, you do. But I'm really disciplined, and I never turn the TV on during the day unless I'm folding laundry.
Yeah. I do try not to, but I like to have a lunch break.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Robyn just powers through lunch, is what you're saying.
Here, I don't even. Yeah, just stand here, a few crackers. Yeah.
So what happens when you're writing, right? And you find yourself in a tough spot in your writing process? Do you talk to other writers? Do you like go for a walk? Do you put on daytime television?
I find go for a walk, having a shower, because it does something to the top of your head that it's weird. It makes ideas unlock and dialogue come out. I don't know why that does that, but it does. And then thirdly, leave 12 voice messages for Robyn Harding. Asking. That's my process.
Delete.
You know what I mean? Call blocked.
Are you in yet? Robyn?
The funny thing about the shower, you know what I think? I'm the same. Like ideas come in the shower, and I think it's because you're in the shower, and so you can't get out and write them down. So it's like this, oh my God, okay, no, now and all these ideas are coming, and I should get some sort of like waterproof whiteboard in there, because so many ideas come, and then you're worried that by the time you get out and dry off and get dressed and get back to your office, what if they're gone? But
Right.
I think really it's about, just stepping away sometimes, a walk or some housework, or,
Yeah.
And then for the big things, definitely Roz and I brainstorm, and a few other friends that we
Good.
have are really good at helping work through plot points, which is so fun, right? Like brainstorming is really fun. Every writer I know is like, I'll help you brainstorm if I have time, because it's really fun.
Yeah, I would imagine. Like to be a fly on that wall. I think that would be really kind of fun to hear the whole process. So where do the ideas for your stories typically come from?
So typically for me, I would say, I always start with a premise. I think Roz starts with characters, but I start with a premise, and then I figure out the people I want to drag through the mess. But I get a lot of ideas from media or from stories people tell me. And then there's just some little like tingle I get when there's something where I want to know more. And I think, is this something that would engage readers, and is there a story here that could be developed, into a whole book? And that's usually where I start.
I've written all the 3 thrillers that I've written are all based on things I've done or known, or they're not that far from kind of my experiences. And I've got a 4th one coming, and again, it's a travel thriller, a journey I went on that could have gone so disastrously wrong, and in the book obviously does go as wrong as I can possibly have it go. So I think I take things that I feel confident describing and then kind of twist them. But I did have a dream though, Robyn, lately, didn't I? I had a dream that I woke up, because normally I dream and I think, wow, that's amazing, and then I wake up and I realise it's complete garbage and I couldn't ever pitch it. But this one, it kind of stuck, and an hour later I mentioned it to Robyn, and then we had a really fun morning hashing it out and figuring out how would that work, and because it's quite scary. So
very scary. I was
I think that's a scary idea.
It's a very scary and like scarily possible. Like usually if I have a scary dream, it's usually super out there. But this is like something, like it was very cinematic. It was like a movie, this dream.
Really?
Yeah, I got a gasp out of Robyn Harding, and then I knew I was on the right track. Yeah, I was like, okay,
good.
Hold on.
With most of Roz's ideas, I'm like,
I get a cackle. Next. I get a cackle.
I had a crazy dream. Sam Bailey and I are friends, and so I texted her my dream, and she's like, "Oh my God, you have to write that." And I was like, "Oh my God, no, that was like super dark." She's like, "Oh no, it's perfect." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know what's happening, but yeah."
Well, do you write, Jen?
No.
Oh.
No.
We should give it to her. Give it to her and make her pay you for it.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Finder's fee.
It's exactly right. No, I wrote an academic book, but that's like who cares?
That's not. I think that's quite cool.
Oh no.
Academic how?
There's no film options. There's nobody that's star. So
I did, if I could say, I just got a film option on The Drowning Woman, a TV option. So
awesome.
Yeah. I mean, an option it's still a very long process, very tenuous maybe process, but it's always.
Does that mean somebody calls like dibs on it and then?
Yeah. So a producer and a studio both came together and optioned it. So it will mean that, it's off the table for anybody else for a year and a half while they develop it. So.
Wow.
Yeah, I really like them. We had a really good call, and they have
congratulations
a really good vision for it. Yeah, thank you.
That's amazing. And will you be involved in it because you have a background in screenwriting, or?
Yeah, I would like to be, but we can't negotiate anything right now because the writers strike. The screenwriters are on strike, so everything's on hold, like even conversations about that. But we had a call, and I said that I would be interested in
Yeah.
But they always want, you know, the most senior, biggest name of everything, writer, director, stars, and everything. So I would probably like have a role, but it wouldn't be just me, right? So
Right.
I've never done a TV show either, so I'm totally open to having.
Yeah. What were your screenplays? Can you tell
I had
the audience who's...
I've written some TV scripts, but never got them produced. But I've had a film produced. Yeah.
Awesome. Super cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Uh-huh. I'm trying to think what else that I have. We've talked a lot about, like, so I'm going to hold up the books, right, for people who are watching. So you have Roz Nay with The Hunted, and then it's only 1 week old, The Drowning Woman by Robyn Harding. So you all have both been absolutely amazing. So is there anything that you want people to know that I haven't asked? Other than to read your entire backlist and buy these books. And
yeah, that would be good. That'd be very appreciated. I was trying to think of spilling some of Roz's private secrets that she wouldn't want anyone to know, but
no, you won't. I know you won't. She won't ever. She won't, because I've got the equivalent secrets on her. Talking of secrets, Jen.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So
I have to tell you one thing, Jen. At the intro, you said you met us in Toronto, but you met us in Dallas.
I think, you know what, I realized as soon as I said that I was like, you know what, I think it was Dallas.
It was Dallas. It was an escalator.
At Bouchercon.
Yeah, well, Roz was an escalator. Robyn, I don't remember. All I know is that at one point I was sitting next to you at this gigantic lunch table with like Hannah and a bunch of other people, and I was like, holy cow, how did this happen? Like a bucket list.
I remember meeting you. I remember in the bar meeting you.
Yeah, bar. Yeah. That sounds
right.
True. No, it's fun. And so I think my plans are 2024 is in Nashville. Will you guys travel that far east, or will you do Thriller Fest instead?
I think I'm going to do, I've never gone to Thriller Fest. I've literally only gone to that one conference in Dallas, and then COVID hit, and then I think I will probably do, if timing works out on my next book, because I can't go to that right before my book comes out. It's too much. So I'll see what happens with my pub date, but I'm leaning towards Thriller Fest, and then the year after is in Calgary. First Canadian.
Yes.
We will all be there. All the Canadians are committed. It's super.
Oh my gosh, that's like like my dream. Like all of you, like Jennifer Hillier and Hannah and Sam.
Yeah,
and
we're all booked. Jennifer's like got some fancy special role. She's like
she'll be in a tiara, I think.
Oh really?
Yeah, she's the Canadian, I think, or something. Yeah, it's it'll be really fun.
Fun stuff. What can we ask? What we, as if I'm more than one person? No, I'm thinking about like us who are watching and listening. What you're currently working on, or you can't.
I'm working. You go, Robyn.
Okay, I have a new book coming out next year, and it's called The Haters, and it is about a woman who she's a high school counselor, and she writes her first novel and gets it published, and she's over the moon. And she's at her book launch party about to take the stage when she checks her email, and she has an email from a person, she's a complete stranger, accusing her of stealing stories from the students she counsels. And it begins to snowball onto social media, and then things start happening to her in real life, and it's whether she can find out who is behind all this abuse before it ruins everything for her.
Oh, wow.
I've got one as well. I've got one. I think it's going to be called The Offing, and it's set on a boat in Australia. It's about two NYU college students roommates who go to Australia. One of them's got herself all mixed up in a really embarrassing, humiliating, uncool relationship with a professor. So they're kind of on the run. She's kind of trying to get away from that. She's broken up with him. She's trying to get away from that. And they go to Australia and find out that the professor has followed her there. So they quickly, in a bit of a frenzy, take boats, jobs on a boat, jobs on a private yacht as crew, and they jump onto this boat and set off into tropical Australia, only to find, of course, that the world on the boat isn't quite what they think it is. So,
Very nice.
Oh, I'm sure both of them will be absolutely spectacular. So I'm joined in conversation with like best-selling writers, fabulous people, Robyn Harding and Roz Nay. Yeah, this is absolutely amazing. And like how you continue to find stories and continue to keep us engaged and twisted. Yeah, it's a true talent. So thank you.
When we're such nice people, and we write horrible things, but we are nice people, aren't we, Robyn?
Is it because you write it on the page? Is that like somehow therapeutic? Because I've heard the opposite. I shouldn't probably say in case one of them guests here, but like romance writers are not as affable as the mystery.
That's what I've heard too. I it's just hearsay. I have no firsthand knowledge, but that's what I've heard too, that thriller writers are super nice.
Yes.
Writing all this crazy stuff, and romance writers are more backstabby and have less of a community and more competitive, and then they write all this lovely heartfelt stuff. But I don't know if it's true. I
think thriller writers
they go to, do they have like a romance like BoucherCon? They probably
they
do. Yeah, they would.
I don't even want to know what it's called. It's probably something.
It's the RWA conference, and they do have them, and there's often like scandals that come out, but there's scandals at ours too sometimes.
Yeah, well, yeah, very sad about the one in Dallas. Truth be told, after
there
that.
was.
Yeah, we'll talk offline.
Oh, I remember now.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was a long time ago now.
It was a long time ago.
Right, that's right.
So this is in support of Cleveland Reads, right? Which is like the mayor's initiative to kind of boost. Yes, I know. And I'll stand up and look. I love Roz and Robyn.
Yay! What's the t-shirt shot?
It is a t-shirt. It's going all over social media. Thanks, Mike. No, can you talk a little bit about why reading or why literacy is important to you?
So as I was saying, I tried to volunteer with the homeless, and I was far too fragile to do that. And so literacy has been my passion and cause. And I've worked at 2 different schools doing reading work with kids who, in the first school, they were kids who had suffered a lot of trauma and abuse, and they were so behind academically. And reading in that case was about the words and the stories, but it was so much just about the connecting and the trust that they would have with another adult. It was less about me ensuring that their reading got up to par, but just that, somebody would sit with them and pay attention to them. And so I love that so much. And then the next one I did was more just sort of reluctant readers or delayed readers. And we did do kind of literacy tools, and yeah, it's so rewarding for me. And it's so, books were such a comfort to me as a kid, and all my life were such a wonderful place to escape to. And I just think more people having that, it would be a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. Thank you for that amazing work. Makes a huge difference.
Oh, you're welcome.
No, it does. Yeah. Huge difference. Libraries are popular places for those who are unhoused, right? We're a safe place. If it's cold outside, we're warm. If it's warm outside, we're cool. Access to, computers. There was a gentleman that I befriended who would come into my library, and he liked to read the classics. And so I was like, well, I'm reading Little Women. He's like, I'll read it. And that's Little Women's one of my favorites, favorite classics. And so he would read books and we would talk about them. They're people who have been, set of circumstances. And you just don't know what, but, for a while I didn't see him, and he came back to say, no, I got a job, and, I'm living with, a friend or whatever, but books connect people in ways that not much else does.
Yeah, and we can't live without story. We can't live without stories. Humans have never done it, ever. I don't think we were always telling stories, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I used to teach high school English. That would be my connection to kind of books and making sure, or trying to encourage kids to read, and my own kids as well. I think there's something really nice about being read too. So it is like a conversation.
Absolutely.
And so at the same time you're kind of meeting the story and the writer and whatever they've put on the page, you're also connecting with, if you're reading to somebody, you're connecting with that person also. So I think it's really multi-layered.
I agree. And in Cuba, where they make cigars in the cigar factory, it's a relatively monotonous job, but they have people that are reading to the workers. They're reading them story just to keep them engaged in literacy. And there's no, I mean, even as an adult, like I love being read to, like
Me too.
whether it's, you know, Hank and Hannah on First Chapter Fun, or it's an audiobook and the narrator is spectacular. There's just something comforting about being read to.
I always fall asleep though. My daughter stopped doing it because I fall asleep in 5 minutes, and then she's like, "Mum, I am reading to you." But it's so comfy. Yeah, just settle right in and start snoring.
Absolutely. So we're gonna morph to like the final 5 questions. So Roz, you have a writing school. What is one lesson you would tell aspiring writers?
What is one thing I would tell them? Actually, Robyn and I were talking about this at the weekend because she had her launch. What did I say? I said, take your time. That was my advice with the first draft. That's what we were talking about. We were saying that there's never going to be a time like that again, because if things go well and your book goes how you want it to, there'll be people, you know, pressurizing you or watching you or wanting something more. And as lovely as that is as a problem to have, it's pressure that you don't have with the first book. So I think take your time and enjoy it, and enjoy the kind of feeling of getting thoughts onto paper or a screen. I think there's something really pure about that. So yeah, don't worry too much about what comes next.
Awesome. Robyn, do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
Yeah, my advice is always try to finish something. You know, I think it's very easy. I did it myself for many years. It's very easy to write the first few chapters or a first act even, but until you finish an entire story, you don't really understand the whole, you know, narrative arc and the, you know, what happens in the middle and what happens at the end, and the whole feel of a full story if you just keep you know, getting disillusioned on an idea. So I say, even if it's not the one, try to finish it.
Oh, that's awesome. So Robyn, you love to travel.
I do.
What's one place that's still on your list that you haven't visited yet?
Oh my goodness. Gosh, there's, you know, one place I want to go that sort of some people think is weird that I want to go there so much is Scandinavia.
Yeah.
I really want to go to like Sweden and Denmark and Finland, and but my husband, who's from Australia and likes the heat, he's convinced me that we can go there when we're really old. Like, I think that would also be a good place to go when we're older.
Yes.
So anyway, it's still on my list. But yeah, there's a lot of places that I could go on forever, but that's one that's always kind of in my head.
Awesome. How about you, Roz? Because you've traveled and seen a ton of the world and worked jobs, like at a dive camp, and
I want to go to Morocco. That's always been really high. That is my number one. I'd really like to go because there's so much to do there. You've got the ocean and the deserts, and also the cities and the markets and the colours and the buildings and the that's on my list. Morocco.
I read Sister Stardust by Jane Green, and then I was like compelled, like now I have to go because she does a wonderful job with character and setting. And I was like,
have you read
and the sounds and the spices?
Yeah,
I have to go. I'm
going to say now, and Robyn's going to know what I'm going to say. Have you read Who is Maud Dixon?
Dixon?
Have you read that?
It's on my.
Well, it's really
great.
Good.
Yeah, it's great.
Did I read it?
It's a literary thriller, and it's in Morocco for half of it.
Yes, because there's a car involved. Okay, then yes. There's a
car accident.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, Spoilers for people who might be listening or watching, but yes, really well done.
Yeah, it's really good.
Roz, what book do you think everybody should read and why? And it can't be one of Robyn's.
Can be.
Gosh, what book should everybody read and why? Gosh, I need to go. You sprung that on me. I would have always said, but I feel like Robyn might roll her eyes, is To Kill a Mockingbird. My kids just read it, or my oldest kid just read it. Yeah, I knew she was going to do that.
I'm like, where's Robyn's mic?
No, I love that book too.
I love that book as a kid. I felt like it was quite formative for me. It really changed how I saw people in the world, and it's got a sentence in it I'll never forget, where with Boo Radley laughing. Do you remember that when Scout rolls up in the tire and bounces off his porch, and then later admits she could hear laughing in the house? And I remember being so scared by that line. I remember reading. I remember exactly where I read it. Anyway, so my son just read it as part of his English class, and so we were able to talk about it. And I think it's just got everything in there that there's so much to talk about.
Without a doubt, and no matter how many times you read it, it's still just as good. It's like sometimes you read stuff and you think like, I read it as a teen, and you read it as an adult, and you're like, what was I thinking? But that holds up for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Robyn, do you have?
Totally joking. I was
gonna say The Hunted. I know, but
yeah. If I can't say The Hunted,
I don't think she's read The Hunted.
I have read The Hunted. I love The Hunted. I heard The Hunted.
I know.
I'm trying to think of one that is a thriller. I would have to say Notes on a Scandal.
Oh, love that book.
Fabulous thriller with a very unique point of view, and it's just so clever. It has some really dark humor in it. It's so devastating. The characters are so creepy. It's so brilliant.
That's the kind of book I read with the lights on.
Yeah. Have you read it, Jen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
and the movie is equally good.
I have not.
Kate Blanchett and Dame Judi Dench. It's fantastic.
Yeah. It's good to know that it lived up, because a lot of times I won't see a movie because it's in my brain.
Really
I won't ever see The Secret Life of Bees, because I can remember reading that and knew exactly who those characters were in my brain and how everything unfolded. I'm like, can't do it. So that was before I discovered the dark side. Like, I was recommending books to customers today, and I was like, it was a whole she's like, do you only read psychological thrillers? I'm like, yeah, I have a very dark heart. So, okay, what was the last show you binged? You guys have time to watch TV. I probably should ask that.
Oh, well, Roz, that's all she does, watch TV.
Yeah, all day.
I watch so much TV. It's outrageous.
Me too.
Succession.
Okay.
So genius. I'm rewatching Mad Men.
Okay.
I watched it years ago, and I'm watching it again. It's so smart. Like,
I'm just about to start it. Yeah, because
so good. And as a woman watching it, and just it doesn't feel like that long ago in the 60s, and the way that where women were at that point is unbelievable. It's so, the writing is so sharp, it's so subtle, everything's so subtle. Yeah, it's great.
I just recently binged. There's my dog barking. Sorry.
Better than the police car.
The police there again.
So sorry. I just recently binged Beef on Netflix. Yeah, I
heard it was awesome. Hannah said for us to watch that.
It goes a bit bananas in the last 20 minutes, but yeah.
Okay.
But I loved it.
All right. Would you two ever take a road trip together? and both survive at your destination?
I definitely would. Yeah, definitely.
We're like, so despite all the teasing, we're so compatible. like Roz came down for my book launch party and we had a great night. And then the next night she came to my house and I go, is it okay if we just watch TV tonight? And she's like, absolutely. That's all I want to do too.
That's awesome.
We're so happy.
The 90s.
Yeah, we did. We watched classic 90s thriller, The Hand That Rocked the Cradle.
Oh, Rebecca de, I can never say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Annabella Sciorra. So good.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
so good.
It's fun.
So good. Well, I want to thank both of you, Robyn Harding and Roz Nay, two best-selling writers and obviously two genuine friends. So I want to thank you for joining us. I want to say thank you to our tech team, Mike, for making sure everything went smoothly tonight. And then thanks to all of you who are watching and listening, and happy reading. Have a good night.
Thank you.